Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise to speak on behalf of the Greens on the Strata Schemes Management Amendment Building Defects Scheme Bill 2018. And as we have heard, this bill will seek to amend the Strata Schemes Management Act 2015 in relation to the scheme for rectifying building defects in new strata schemes, the details of which have been outlined clearly and responded to by the Shadow Minister for Innovation and Better Regulation, the member for Swansea, as well as my crossbench colleague, the member for Sydney. While the Greens do not oppose this bill, we do have some questions and concerns about which I wish to turn briefly to now in the hope that the Minister will respond to these in his reply. The first of these is in relation to the mechanism for how a disagreement between a strata committee and a developer will be dealt with when it comes to the issue of costs. The Act does not appear to provide a mechanism to deal with disagreement between a strata committee and a developer as to any amounts required to remedy a defect. It is unclear how much of the bond the Strata Committee is actually entitled to if the cost of remedial work is something that is contested. And I acknowledge the amendment foreshadowed by the member for Sydney and that intends to move to seek to require some improved transparency around the scope of the costs of the works to be included. And it is an amendment which I can say that the Greens will happily support, but I would seek some clarification from the Minister, even if the government does support this amendment, which I do urge them to support the member for Sydney's amendments, that there still remains a question as to how such disputes about amounts of money would be resolved. The other area which I would seek further clarification on is in relation to the limited holding of a bond for 2 years and also the early release of a bond. In relation to the limited holding of a bond for 2 years, I would appreciate the Minister to respond specifically in relation to concerns around the limit of 2 years, especially with regard to issues such as waterproofing. The other area is in relation to the bond itself and the timing of the holding and release of the bond is specifically around the fact that the bill talks about a bond being able to be released early in some circumstances. However, it's unclear what those circumstances are, and I would ask whether or not those circumstances will be identified in regulations or if the Minister can expand on the circumstances in which an early bond release would be enacted. I note that there has been highlighted by the opposition that many key stakeholders have expressed concern about how this bill has been interacted, and I would like to say that in one case one of those stakeholders has raised concern by the fact that this bill has in fact been watered down so much that they question whether it will actually be effective at all in delivering on the initial intent to protect strata owners, and I do hope that the government will look at ways to be able to make sure that we can ensure that the intentions of this bill, what was intended by this bill, is actually being delivered on. Finally, I wish to foreshadow that the Greens in the other place will be... Also, I should just say the Greens are very happy also to support Labor's the opposition's amendment as set out by the member for Swansea and Shadow Minister for Innovation and Better Regulation. The Greens also intend to move an amendment in the other place, in the Legislative Council. We'll be seeking to make an amendment to remove the exemption the bill currently gives to building inspectors from prosecution, as we believe that this is too much protection for a professional who should have professional indemnity insurance. The bill as it stands will protect building inspectors from liability against any action, liability, claim or demand where an act or omission is done in good faith for the purpose of executing functions under this part. Such indemnity may be appropriate for volunteer strata committee representatives, but we would seriously question this protection for professional building inspectors. The Greens amendment will seek to remove protections from liability for inspectors who are professional people, professionally qualified people, and should be expected to act professionally and be covered by professional liability insurance for such errors rather than being provided with statutory protections. More and more people are living in apartments, and that means more and more people are being impacted by strata laws. It is crucial and it is necessary that we get these protections right, and the protections that are put in place for people living in strata communities, living in strata apartments throughout our city and throughout our state need to be protected from the dodgy developers and the people that are more interested in short-term and quick money-making profits than they are about building beautiful homes for people to live in. The Greens believe that all people have the right to a safe, secure, habitable and affordable place to call home, and we will continue to advocate for this right for all the people in New South Wales.